everyone, this is Mariana and you are watching Mexico Relocation Guide, your expert guide to living and retiring in Mexico the right way. In today's video, I want to talk about the 13 negatives of living in Mexico because I'm well aware that living in Mexico isn't going to be for everybody. And if you know anything about me, you know that I'm a huge cheerleader and a huge promoter of Mexico. Not only because I'm from this amazing country, but because I see the positives in people's lives that, moving here has done for them. But again, I know it's not for everybody. And in this channel, I want to give you not only the good, but I also want to give you the bad and the ugly. So in today's video, let's talk about some 13 negatives of living in Mexico. That way, you can actually move here knowing if these are deal breakers for you or not. Number 1, sometimes basic utilities are not always stable. Now, what do I mean by that? It's not uncommon in Mexico for whenever it rains for power outages to happen. Now, luckily, a lot of Mexican homes have gas stoves and gas heaters, so you can still take a shower and cook. But it can be really frustrating if you were about to start that Zoom meeting, if you're still working from home, or if you were about to sit down and binge your favorite Netflix show. Now, what I recommend is always having lamps and batteries at your house, because you never know when one of these things will happen. It usually happens for a few minutes. However, if it rains a lot, it can last for hours. Like, you can get electricity and then you can have an outage again. Now, for me personally, it's a chance for me to read a book, take my dog on a walk, or just take a break from my computer. Number 2, internet speed isn't fast across the country. And this varies by neighborhood. So some cities might say that they have fiber optic internet available, but it's not available all across the city. And sometimes in the same neighborhood, across the street, you might have fiber optic internet, and on the other side of the street, you might not. So in another video, I explained some of the things you should do or ask before renting a property in Mexico. And one of those things is to run a speed test. There's a variety of different programs online that you can use for free. Ask the landlord for the Wi-Fi password and check the actual speed of the internet. This is especially important if you're planning to continue working while you're in Mexico, because there's nothing more annoying than having to run a meeting or having to log on with coworkers and not being able to finish your job because the internet is down. The good news is Mexico is always improving its infrastructure, and more towns and more cities are providing fast-speed internet to a lot of neighborhoods. Número 3, the uneven sidewalks, holes on sidewalks, and sometimes beautiful cobblestone streets that end up being very dangerous and treacherous. Now, what do I mean by this? A lot of streets in Mexico are very old, and it's not uncommon for some sidewalks to be very uneven or sometimes have cracks in them, sometimes have very large holes. And if you're not watching where you're going, you could end up falling in one of these holes and really hurt your ankle or foot. Now, you're probably wondering who doesn't watch where they're going, but it's actually very common for newcomers, especially north of the border where everything is kind of perfect and manicured. Where they move to Mexico, they don't watch where they're going and they fall, especially in very popular expat towns like Ajijic and San Miguel de Allende. They have these beautiful cobblestone streets all over the downtown areas. But if you're not wearing the right shoes, like flat tennis shoes, sturdy shoes, sometimes even sandals can be kind of dangerous, especially if it's raining. So I recommend wearing the right shoes. Ladies, San Miguel and Ajijic is not the place to bring your high heels. Now, luckily in Mexico, there's a lot of pedestrian-only city centers or centros where they have live music, bands play, and usually these city centers are all flat, they're not cobblestones, so it's very easy to walk and not have to watch where you're going, hang out, eat an ice cream, something like that. Now, another thing that you have to be careful about in Mexico is if you have mobility issues, you should really take into consideration the city that you're moving into. Generally though, if you have severe mobility issues, Mexico is probably not the country for you. Number 4, lack of safety building codes and inspections. Now, the safety enforcement from the US came to Mexico, they probably shut the whole country down, because you see a lot of things that you wouldn't normally see north of the border. And that's like, wiring on multiple parts of the city, like extreme wires all attached together, sometimes exposed wires on the street, which seem really dangerous. And sometimes you see outlets next to a sink without a GCI button that would prevent it from shocking the person. Now, obviously, newer construction is getting better about integrating some of these things into their buildings. Number 5, you cannot flush toilet paper. Now, this isn't across the board in every single Mexican home, but there are a lot of Mexican homes that were built a very long time ago, before modern plumbing was invented. And because of this, flushing toilet paper is a no-no. Plumbing in that house doesn't have the power to bring down the toilet paper. So you might go into a restaurant, or you might go into an establishment that's pretty old and has a door on the bathroom that says, favor de tirar papel en la basura, o favor de no jalar papel en el WC, which translates basically to, please throw your toilet paper in the trash, or please don't flush your toilet paper. Luckily, a lot of new construction, again, has the right plumbing, has very modern equipment, and this won't be an issue. So we always recommend working with a very reputable realtor who will know some of these tips and tricks of your local community, because these things can vary by city. And if you want a recommendation, remember we have access to our professional network of vetted and trustworthy contacts in our complete Mexico relocation guide. There's a link down below if you're interested in learning more. Number 6, public bathrooms are not free. Now this might come as a surprise to you if you're coming from the US or Canada. It might come as less of a surprise to you if you're moving to Mexico from Europe. But in Mexico, you actually have to pay at most public bathrooms to even enter. And that doesn't include toilet paper in some cases. So we always recommend carrying a small travel size pack of Kleenex, because you never know when you're going to need toilet paper out and about. Usually these bathrooms cost anywhere between 2 to 5 pesos, and they usually have a gate, a revolving gate, where you pay an amount and then the revolving gate allows you to enter. Even at some places where public bathrooms are free, like airport, a lot of bus stations, normally, yes, they're completely free, but they will have an attendant there, and they will have a little tray or something where you can tip them. I also recommend tipping anywhere between 2 to 5 pesos. Number 8, bribing cops. In Mexico, if you get stopped by a cop for whatever reason, the cop may try to get you to agree to a donation to avoid you getting a ticket. Now, corruption in Mexico isn't uncommon, and I'm not saying that it's okay, but in fact, in 100% of the cases, I would say demand your ticket and don't pay the bribe. But I also know it can be very intimidating when law enforcement stops you. They're asking for a pretty small bribe, and it may be easy to just pay the money and then be on your way. However, in most cases, I would say stick to your guns, ask for your ticket, demand that the officer do the right thing, and in probably 9 out of 10 cases, they'll let you go off with a warning. Number 9, you can't drink the water. Now, in Mexico, water isn't potable like we're used to in a lot of developed countries. For this reason, a lot of people end up buying what's called a garrafón, which is just like a 5 or 10 gallon jug that you can refill. Some people even use, this kind of water to brush their teeth or to wash dishes, which personally I think is an exaggeration, but that's all personal preference. And the cost of these garrafones, they vary, but usually you can expect to pay about 300 pesos a month for drinking water. Number 10, Mexico can be smelly at times. Yes, friends, Mexico can be smelly. And, this fully depends on the neighborhood, whether it recently rained, or something else that might be permeating in the sewage system. Remember that Mexico is a very old country, and a lot of the plumbing and the sewage is very ancient. So for this reason, there does tend to sometimes be smells, especially in the older parts of any city. It also depends on how much your local neighborhood or your neighbors around you have done to pay out of their pocket to improve their sewage system. So even if you are in an older part of town and it doesn't smell around you, it's probably because people locally have done something about it. It could also happen that you're in a newer part of town and your next door neighbor lets their dog use the bathroom right on the curb and they don't pick it up. So Mexico can be smelly at times. Now, luckily, sometimes those smells are very, very favorable. It could be tacos, it could be flautas, it could be pan, and a bunch of other wonderful smells from the wonderful food in all the street food vendors. Numero 11, number 11, Mexico can be noisy. Latinos, I think we all share this in that we like any reason to party, we like to celebrate, and we tend to be noisy when it comes to those things. And Mexico is one of those countries that you will find is noisy. Now, everybody has different sensitivity levels to noise. And I would say that if you're thinking about renting a house in Mexico, definitely spend some time in that neighborhood at different times of the day. Drive by at night, drive on the weekends, and just see, are my neighbors party people? Do they like to play really loud music until the wee hours of the night? In Mexico, also, if you live closer to the city center or the centro, then you will probably get more noise than usual, and that's because churches will ring their bells. All festivals are typically held in the city center, and there's also a lot of restaurants and other establishments that like to crank up the music, especially on the weekends. But Mexico can be noisy. If you're very sensitive to it and you're renting an Airbnb or you're renting short-term accommodations, I would recommend bringing earplugs with you just so that you can sleep through the night. But remember, this is Mexico, and Mexico is noisy. Don't try to change the people. Number 12, English isn't widely spoken. Now, this may be very obvious to you, but you'd be surprised how many foreigners come to Mexico and get very frustrated when the locals don't speak English. Now, Spanish is the official language of Mexico, and in order to thrive when you're living here, I would suggest learning at least the basics and then taking it from there. Learning a little bit more at a time, because Spanish is the first language in Mexico and you will need it in order for you to thrive. The majority of locals in Mexico will probably have gone to public schools where English isn't taught nationwide. If this is a deal breaker for you and you know that you have no interest in learning in Spanish, Mexico might not be the country for you. Although there are a lot of Mexicans that are fluent in English, it shouldn't be expected. So keep that in mind before you move to Mexico. You will need to learn some Spanish. And the final one, number 13, Mexico has earthquakes. But actually, most of the seismic activity is so small that people just sleep right through it or they drive through it and they never even notice. Now, there are particular or very specific hotspots where this can be more noticeable. And if that's something that you're very sensitive to, or if that's definitely a deal breaker for you, then I would recommend not moving to areas where there's a lot of seismic activity. The Bajío region, or anywhere like Querétaro, San Miguel de Allende, Guanajuato, León, all that Bajío region, even some parts of Jalisco, you probably will never feel any movement at all. So with all these negatives, why would anybody want to move to Mexico? Well, for many people, the positives just far outweigh the negatives. Most people move to Mexico for economic reasons. They end up staying because they enjoy the weather. In some parts of Mexico, the weather can be temperate year-round. You can enjoy 70, 60-degree weather every day of the year. And if you're a beach lover, Mexico has some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. Some people love living here because of the food. You also have affordable health care. You have quality rentals that are probably a third of the cost that you're paying north of the border. The people are amazing. The people really do make the difference. And Mexico is rated as the #1 country where expats feel most at home. They feel most included because Mexican people really do want to get to know you. They're curious about you. There's so many reasons why living in Mexico is wonderful. If you're working from home for a US company or a foreign company, and you're a US citizen or resident, you can potentially end up paying 0 taxes if you take advantage of the foreign earned income exclusion. And there's so many benefits. I mean, you have low property taxes if you buy a house. So living in Mexico, really, there are a list of benefits that truly outweigh the negatives. But I would love to hear from you. I would love to know if there's a particular negative that I didn't put in this list or a particular positive that's not included in the list down below. And that's it. Those are the 13 negatives of living in Mexico. My name is Mariana. You are watching Mexico Relocation Guide, and I will see you in the next video.